Welcome to the Retirement Evolved podcast with certified financial fiduciary Adam Bruno.
And we're back with a very special episode of the Retirement Evolved podcast. You know, it's amazing when we look back at our lives and we think of the people that have had the biggest impact. I am incredibly blessed and honored that my mentor, Bob Grace, is in the building with us today. I'll let him tell you all of his credentials, but I just want to say how happy we are to have him here. We're going to do a very special episode where we talk a little bit about stuff that often gets forgotten when we talk retirement. So, ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure to introduce the one, the only, the incomparable Bob Grace.
I'm embarrassed, Adam. Thank you so much for the introduction, my friend.
You are welcome. So give everybody, people that are listening to this, they've probably heard you on the radio before. You've been on the radio forever. You've done great business in this town. You've helped so many people. Give us a little bit about your background. So just for the people that might not have heard you before.
Well, I'm one of the old guys hanging around this town and around every town, I guess. I've been in the business. I started in 1969 as a life insurance agent back in Cleveland, Ohio, and been enjoying and loving this business ever since. I moved down to Florida in 2001, and I bought a van. I put a file cabinet in the back, and I started running back and forth to people's houses after I'd done seminars. Now, back then, there were no steak dinners, Adam.
That's right. I remember you told me the story. If I'm not mistaken, you were the only one. You're putting full-page ads in the paper, and you're bringing people to, what was it, Sam Seltzer's? For events?
Well, Sam, I think it was Seltzer's. I'll tell you, my memory at my age is not that good, but the steaks were good. It was prime rib, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
In fact, I remember up in Port Charlotte bringing 100 people into the senior center up there, no meals whatsoever. So it was a different world altogether.
That's right. And, you know, the funny thing is, it's funny how the world evolved to now we look at these events that we host with our firms and everything, and it's really supposed to be more centered on the education, which is, you know, kind of how I stepped. I still don't have a fraction of the time in this business that you have, but, you know, my take on it was it's becoming an educational event. It always felt like from the first time that I met you that your events weren't just dinner seminars. And I know you hate that word as much as I hate it. You know, seminars are just, but, you know, you had really what we call workshops or educational events.
Well, they were. A lot of the people in our business call the people that come, or a big majority of them, plate lickers. Become a little more sophisticated. We call them food critics.
Food critics. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
But people come out, and we met a lot of our great clients. You know, I have over 4,100 clients here in Southwest Florida that I've worked with for the last 20 years. My goal has always been to educate and consult and help people get where they want to go in retirement. And the big problem is that most of the people in the financial world are either on the left side of the fence or on the right side of the fence, meaning they're either stock and bond, and I hate to use the word jockeys, or stock and bond salesmen, or they're life insurance jockeys, meaning life insurance and that type of thing.
Right.
Those are all financial instruments. And if you call yourself a fiduciary, and a lot of the stock and bond people do, you're not unless you have license to sell all the financial vehicles out there, so you can truly do, which if you're calling yourself a fiduciary, be working in the client's best interest.
And if that sounds familiar to you out there, now you know where I learned it from, because that was one of the biggest things that I learned working with Bob. Just a little history there. Bob and I had a mutual friend, and I had been working in a call center environment. I was selling Gerber Life grow-up plans over the phone in all 50 states, and I was loving life because I was making a little bit of money at the time, but it was nothing compared to the money that's really out there. We could do a whole other podcast on that, on how people get taken advantage of with these big companies sometimes. But the reality is Bob, you know, wanted to meet me through this mutual friend, because Bob really wanted somebody who could communicate better with all of the potential clients. And Bob and I are both on the same page now. We say clients on programs like this so that you understand who we're talking about, but we don't have clients. We have families. I mean, that's the reality. We have our families that we serve. But Bob said, you know, the communication isn't there. He really wanted somebody who was going to be a go-getter and really interested in getting into the weeds, helping people, making sure that we built great relationships. So I said, financial advisor, I don't know anything about the stock market or anything like that. And he said, well, you don't need to, trust me. And I went to one of his events, and this one was at Ruth Chris, and it changed my life forever. I watched him for an hour and 10 minutes. It wasn't a sales pitch. It was an education. He gave these people an education for an hour and 10 minutes. One of his favorite things to say is, we don't even know what we don't know. And then there's even more of what we don't know, right? So like that's what that was. That was capturing that moment. You shared so much information with these families that were things that they didn't even know they didn't know. And that's what my goal has been ever since, is to continue that tradition and continue the things that I've learned from you. So the reality is, you've seen this business so many different ways. You've seen things come and go. And you know, you've been on the radio with the other guys, with the Alfies and the Resnicks and the people that are just sitting there slamming each other for an hour about why the market's right or why annuities are bad or why everything's. And you and I can sit back and laugh because we know the real truth. The real truth is, like you said, how can you call yourself a fiduciary or a financial professional if you don't have every tool in your toolbox to help your client reach their goals or get the job done that they need done, right?
Well, Adam, you and I have gone through the course, which was very, very difficult, and took the very difficult test. So we can literally call ourselves certified financial fiduciaries.
That's correct.
Now.
Yeah.
And we can lose our licenses and be put out of business if we're caught doing not what's in the client's best interest. But we've never done that. It's all about educating people and helping them understand what the options are, making a recommendation on a professional level. But at the end of the day, I work for the client. They don't work for me.
That's right.
And I'm all about education. I did all my education through college at night over a 22-year period of time, from the time I was 18 until I graduated from law school 22 years later. And
Crazy
I love doing
story.
it. And I'm still reading 4 or 5 books a week. And I just love educating myself, staying on top.
That's right.
You know, I've got 3 or 4 designations from the American College of Financial Planning, plus the Certified Financial Fiduciary. I stay up to speed, as you do, Adam, on what the latest things in the tax world are, the financial planning world, the optional products out there that are going to do the best job for a client. You know, most of all the people I talk to that are close to or going into retirement have one goal. It's not about buying an annuity or a stock or a bond. It's about making sure they have adequate income that increases with inflation, paying the least amount of taxes, and they have some substantial guarantees backed by the claims paying ability of some of those companies out there that have never defaulted on that they will never, ever run out of money.
Yes.
That is called sleep at night insurance.
That's right. I like that. And, you know, the reality is, I've met a lot of wonderful people in this business, and I've met some really not so wonderful people. The best always stick out in your mind, and you are among the best. When I talk about, I would say that you are number one best all around when we talk about specifically income planning. And you are very passionate about that because you're not shy about telling people how old you are. I get it. But you're very passionate about it. Because,
I don't remember how old I am. I'm too old to remember.
But I mean, just the way that you have kind of reinvented this industry and turned the focus back towards, listen, we don't have pensions. If you don't have some sort of foundation set up for income, it's very, very important to do that. And now, you know, you and I have talked about the different tools that are available. We've talked about the insurance world. We've talked about barrier notes. We've talked about different things that are available to create that income stream. Tell me a little bit about why you're so passionate about income. And you know, I know the answer, but I think everybody else needs to know that answer too.
Well, it's not your net worth that puts food on your plate, clothes on your back, and gas in your tank. It's cash flow. It's that paycheck that comes in. When you're working, that's your employment. Now, some people work on straight commission, but most people do not. If you're on straight commission, you know, some days it's up, sometimes the income is down, blah, blah, blah. But when you retire, you've got to have a steady, certain income. It's got to have the ability to increase as you need it. And unfortunately, you can't plug a number in for inflation because inflation simply is not a straight line.
Right.
Some years it's 1 or 2%. In fact, 6 months ago, had you come in my office, I'd say, well, inflation is no big deal. It's 2 or 3%. I'm lying on the low side if I'm saying it's 6 to 7%. It's more like 9 or 10 if you go to the grocery store and the gas station.
It's crazy. Yeah, it is crazy.
So what we do is build assets that are guaranteed to grow at a certain level on a compound basis that you can turn on income from as you need them. In other words, laddering those income sources
right.
that are going to also, and many times, provide something that many people need and didn't need 20 years ago so much, and that's long-term care benefits. In other words, doubling the income if you can't do 2 of those 6 activities of daily living.
Right.
So we look at it holistically, keeping enough money to come in, building a legacy for your family if that's what you want to do. But first of all, take care of yourself. Make sure you never run out of money. And another way to approach that, I know you do a lot of this, Adam, is reduce the tax liability as much as you can. And there are a lot of techniques to do that.
And that's the key, right? I mean, you taught me that. A big portion of every. So again, if you've heard all this before, now you know where we got it from. But the reality is, Bob, we talk about this, and Bob and I have butted heads on this topic before too, because I think of Bob like a father. He thinks of me like a son. So we don't always see eye to eye on certain things, but there is one thing that's absolutely for sure. Income and income basis becomes absolutely pivotal in retirement, and you can't rely on Social Security. We all know that, we're set to run out in 2030, right? Like we know that the numbers are showing us, obviously it's probably not going to happen, but the reality is, do we want to take that chance now as we get older, right?
Well, a lot of the professionals are not necessarily saying going to run out, but a 30% cut across the board, that would be devastating for the people that are living primarily, or if not all of it, from Social Security. But there's planning that can be done. And you have to have a professional. This is not a do-it-yourself process, folks. You're not going to pick up a book or watch Susie Orman on radio or TV who says, cut up your credit card. If you haven't done that a long time ago, you're in deep trouble.
Right.
The people that I work with don't have a ton of money, but they've got enough. But they could run out because we're all living a lot longer. It's not because of longevity. It's medical science. Many people are going to live well over the age of 100. It's already happening.
Well, you are. I know you are. It's and the reality. Yeah, that's right. Well, as long as you can still recognize the guy in the mirror, right? That's what you like to say. Right. That's your favorite saying. The thing is that Bob has actually built a legacy on working with families specifically for this. And now that he's gotten older, he's built this very successful practice that he sold. He's still working with select groups of families, and he's doing it at his own pace now, which is wonderful. You guys know this, our family members that are listening, that we're already very selective of who we want to work with, but it's a situation where you just love it when you see the caller ID and it's John, right? You hate it when you see the caller ID and you're like, oh my God, it's this guy again, right? So that's part of the reason why we're very selective. But one of the things that makes Bob so unique, this idea of income, when we talk about, and we'll just say annuities because that's the reality. Some of it is done by annuities. Bob, what I've noticed is people have all of a sudden become very educated about the A word, right? And now you start to see them as soon as it's mentioned. It's automatic shields go up. People are concerned, but the reality is, if we look at that word and we understand what we're trying to accomplish, it just feels like more education is needed, because it is a very, very cruel environment in the insurance world out there with some of these guys taking you to dinner, trying to sell you an annuity. You know what I tell people, and I don't know if you've been telling your families the same thing. If you get an invitation to a dinner and you don't see on the back of the invitation investment advisory services offered through, like with us, it's Evolution Wealth Management. If you don't see that somewhere on the invitation, that somebody's only going to be able to offer you annuities there, which is kind of like, well, why do I go then if they don't have everything there, if they're not able to offer every tool, right? So this annuity landscape, you have been the king of it for a long time, and always for the right reasons, and you've seen it change so much. What would you tell people about the A word right now that might help them understand, and break through that barrier?
Well, anybody that's breathing is listening to the radio knows we're in a political environment now, and it's a crazy environment, totally unfair. I'm not going to talk about either side of the fence and which was unfair and which is fair here, but politicians do not tell you what they're going to do. And if they do, they're lying to you because they never do it.
Right.
They only tell you what their competition is not going to do. And that sounds to me like what stockbrokers only are saying about annuities. Annuities are simply a tool. They should be at least looked at as part of every retirement income strategy that's available. When I was practicing law, I would talk to my clients about inter vivus and this legalese and that legalese, and their eyes would roll back in their head, and I'd never see them again. Very quickly, I found out it's not what I know, it's what I'm able to help the people that I'm working with understand. So I started talking about a trust like a dresser. And in the top drawer was dad's drawer and mom's drawer. And if dad died first, the dad's money went into the kid's drawer, and mom had access to the kid's drawer. And people would come back in and say, I think I want one of those dressers. So we put together a living trust for them that protected their money from going through probate, protected the money, and it was great. Well, we build a retirement plan, at least I do, just like you build a house. And everybody knows the strongest part of a house is the foundation. Then you've got the walls of the house, then you've got the roof. The foundation should be made up of guaranteed certain income, Social Security, maybe some CDs. In today's world, a little bit more than it would have been 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? Oh, man.
But how long will that last? I don't think forever.
Well, it's an inverted yield curve, so you know that the clock's ticking on how long we have with this stuff, right?
Exactly. So you want to stay stuff on the bottom that's going to cover your essential expenses, food, clothing, medication. Then the walls of the house, you've got to have money set aside for inflation and emergencies. Emergencies simply should be in the bank. If you're earning 8 or 9%, and we can show you how you can do that in some of those annuities or even more, you don't want to take money out of that bucket to pay for an emergency. So keep 50 or 100 grand in the bank, earning 0.5% or nothing. You can write a check on it for that emergency.
And we couldn't say that even 3 years ago. We couldn't say that, right?
Exactly right.
Crazy.
But again, you want that liquid. Then
Right.
you also have to have inflation. Now, inflation can be an annuity. We can ladder those annuities and turn them on as needed, or it could be some money in the market. Once you've got that foundation and the walls done, then if you've got extra money, we'll put that in the market. We'll put it in the market based on your risk tolerance. Is it ETFs or safer? Do you want to go wild and buy some crazy stuff like Tesla? I have no idea, but we're going to find out what your risk tolerance is, build from the house from the bottom up, not from the roof, and have a little bit of safe money, a lot of safe money actually, and then you have some emergency money, some inflation money, and then you've got some growth money. And I think probably the market's a better place to do that. Now, I don't offer gold. I don't offer silver. That's around your neck
Right.
and around your finger. I'm
Right.
not big on that.
Yeah. And you know what we're not big on right now is the fees that are associated with gold
Oh,
and silver.
absolutely.
It's
All that
unbelievable.
stuff. Crazy.
And you know, you get these people on, you know, William Devane telling you to buy gold still. I don't know if he's still on there, but you know what I was really upset about? You know how Bob and I have a huge age gap, but we have a similar soul. We both like Westerns. We like, you know, a lot of the old action series like Magnum PI, stuff like that. So I know Bob's seen it. Now we're seeing Tom Selleck starting to pitch reverse mortgages, which is, oh God, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know why. And he even says out there, a reverse mortgage isn't a way to take your home. Like I get it, but man, Tom, I don't know if you're in the financial world, and I don't know how much they're paying you, but it's not enough for that reputation of being the reverse mortgage guy now.
Well, here's one of the things we're going to disagree on.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm a real fan of the American College of Financial Planning.
Right.
And a professor has written a book from that school, which it does all the CFP training, all the high-level education in the financial world. There is a legitimate use for a reverse mortgage. You know, an investment kicks off income, gives you income or gives you some kind of growth. Your house is growing. It does not kick off income. It's a dead investment sitting in your backyard that costs you money every year.
Right.
And a reverse mortgage properly set up allows you to take some of that debt equity out of that house without ever having to pay the house payment on that debt equity and use it to maintain your lifestyle.
Right.
Now, you need to have somebody who understands it and does it properly, who's an expert at it without question, but it is and could be and should be looked at if you're down to the bottom of the bucket and you're running out of money.
I agree with you. I actually don't disagree with that statement. I think we can both agree, though, that Tom Selleck is not the expert that you call for that.
No, he's just a pitch man. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, so going back to the annuity conversation as well, we structure it very similar. You know, obviously anything that you want, we think of annuities as, you know, the ultimate bond alternative. Instead of holding a bond to maturity, you have annuities, you have access to 10%, you don't pay any fees. The reality,
a personal pension plan.
Personal pension plan. We don't do as much of that now, but the reality is that I was at an event, and I think you were supposed to be there too, but you weren't there that year. I think you were doing something else. You might have been out of the country. We were there, and Shaq was there, you know, the basketball player. And the 100 best firms in the United States at this event, you know, we're all sitting there, we're having dinner, and you know what that's like. You know how you and I are both the same way with that. It's like, okay, let's listen to everybody talk about how great they are. But we go because we like to see the speakers. The one year we got to see Michael Phelps. We've gotten to see a lot of great speakers. But Shaq was there, and Shaq has no idea that he's in the room with, like, you know, 100 firms, 100 financial firms, right? But the speaker, Shaq, was there, and then Cody, who was interviewing Shaq on the stage, said, you know, if you had any advice financially for these younger basketball players, what would you tell them? And without missing a beat, Shaq says, buy an annuity. That's what he said. And Cody's like, well, whoa, why would you say that? He's like, oh, he said, because these young kids are going to spend all their money anyway. If you put enough money into an annuity, you're going to get income for the rest of your life. Now, to me, that makes a lot of sense, because you're talking about people with a significant amount of wealth. Now they're turning around and guaranteeing themselves a certain amount of income on that wealth, right? And the reality is, whether you love it or you hate it, you get a check every month for the rest of your life, you know.
Let me play my lawyer role a little bit with you. I think annuities are people when they get close to the distribution of money. And what Wall Street doesn't understand, most financial people don't tell you about, is there's a total difference between the accumulation of money and the distribution of money. And one of the big things that happens on the back end is either you're going to pay taxes now, later, or never. Now, most people, when I ask the question, they prefer the never.
Never, right?
Absolutely.
Never. That's
it. Being a lawyer, let me throw a section of the Internal Revenue Code out at you. Go look it up, people. It's 7702. It's one of the most magical sections of the whole entire Internal Revenue Code. It allows you to put money in like a Roth, but on a Roth, you've got a $6,000 or $7,000 limit. That's not going to get you much of a retirement. This money grows tied to an outside index. When the index goes up, it's a cap of, currently the caps are 10, 11%. It resets every year. If the cap goes down, the worst you're going to do is zero, so you're not making up losses. That money grows tax deferred. When you're ready to take it out, and you can do it before the age of 59 and a half, you're not locked in like you are in a 401k or an IRA. It is 100% tax-free if you set it up properly.
That's right.
So that, to me, for a younger person, and some people ask, when should I start saving for retirement? The answer is yesterday. I started working at a Dairy Queen when I was 14 years old. Had there been 401ks or the 7702 program, I should have started putting money in. They weren't available
14?
back then.
They had ice cream when you were 14?
Well, that was back. That was back in the year aught.
Listen, so one of the things that you said that makes a lot of sense, that is a very good investment vehicle. And I'm assuming you're talking about an index universal life plan.
Exactly.
Yes. So the one thing that people constantly slam, including myself, I've done this before as well. I am a recovering slammer of the index universal life. The reason that I did not like it was because, if we're being completely transparent about this, for the first 5 to 6 years, you're paying a pretty hefty fee. Okay. But the reality is, what you just said is the key. You would have had to pay much more than that in taxes on that money had you invested that any other way. So that fee far outweighs what you could potentially end up paying in taxes on that same amount of money.
I think it's better for people up to the age of about 60.
Right.
It takes 8 to 10 years to build.
To really cook. Yeah.
Here's the analogy. If you and I were in a partnership on a 10-story office building, we got it completed, we rented the first floor the first year, we were still be losing money. And we rented the second floor. The second year, I had an infinitum. When we got the 10th floor, all the floors rented, everything after that's almost pure profit to us.
Gravy,
that's
right.
exactly how that insurance policy works. And the fees average out about the same as they do in a mutual fund.
That's right.
Which is in the 1 to 1.5% range over time. But the big deal is you're not paying 25, 35% taxes on that money when it comes out.
Yeah.
So you blend that tax-free money with your taxable money from your IRA and 401k, the tax time bombs, lowers your overall tax liability. You pay less in Medicare expenses, less of your Social Security is taxed, and more of the money goes where it should go, in your back pocket.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I'm such a big fan of that. Now, again, I'm a big fan of it when we're not talking to somebody who's 65 or 70 years old, because that's a really hard thing to do.
I'm with you.
But I absolutely agree with it for anybody who's younger, anybody who's even 60 is still good to me. Like the way that we're living now, 60 is still a good time to do it. But the reality is something that you didn't talk about also, when you're investing in a Roth, you don't have any guarantees of tax-free money if you die. At least with an index universal life plan, you have a significant death benefit. It's not as significant as it is for a regular insurance plan because you're not buying it for the death benefit, but you do have a death benefit that is paid out tax-free if something does happen to you. If you're putting that money in a mutual fund or a 401k, there's no death benefit in there. It's just whatever the mutual fund or the 401k is worth. So to me, it's absolutely a no-brainer of something that should be looked into, especially if you are 60 or younger. I mean, it's just, in reality, nobody can argue with that fact. There is a death benefit. Yeah, so that is part of what you're paying your fee for, and it's money well spent.
Let me tell you a sad story. My urologist, who knew me very well, by the way, 48 years old, making a ton of money, doing a great job, and he had $500,000 in the bank, making less than 0.4%. So he gave that to me. We put it in the universal life. He was paying $60,000 a year. He'd made 1.5 or 2 payments, I think. So over the period of time from 48 to 65, he would have put $1.5 million in this contract.
Right.
At 66, we had him scheduled to take $191,000 a year, completely income tax free.
Right.
If he lived to age 85, he and his family would have pulled out more than $8 million for putting in 1.5 over that age 48 to 65, 20-year period of time. Now, it's absolutely phenomenal for people younger. It's still good for people in their 50s and 55, as long as they got about 10 years to either wait for it or fund it. You need an expert to work that out for you, to do the numbers. It's not just like going online and buying something like this. That's, Adam, where you come in. That's where I come. We're consultants. We understand those options. Your stockbroker has no idea what that means and what they are. So use the people that understand them to help you see if they're correct for you. They may not be, but at least explore that.
And the funny thing is, Bob, you never see this. You never see two firms working together. You never see, because we really do want to kind of revolutionize the industry a little bit and make sure that the industry has become bigger than our egos, right? We can't allow the industry to continue to win with this mentality of, well, you either have stocks or you have bonds or you have annuities. You have that. There has to be enough of us out there that are continuing the fight, showing people that you have to have access to everything that's in the drawer. That was Dr. B that you were talking about. We're not going to say his name. Yeah, but that was Dr. B.
Exactly.
He was a great guy. He passed away.
Yes, he did. Yeah. He had a horrible accident, unfortunately. So here's another thing. Yeah. You listen to the radio show, guys, and I was on radio for over 15 years, and there's one guy out there that is probably a pretty smart stock guy. But all he ever does for 2 hours is slam annuities. And he calls the people that sell them, taking people out to the woodshed. And he calls them incompetent and banks. I mean, my God, politicians aren't even that bad. Yeah. I never say negative things about my competition. You know what? Everybody offers something. If you're looking for risk and you want something that could blow up in your face but might really perform, maybe, go work with a guy like that. If you want safety, predictability, certainty, Adam and I are going to offer you both sides of the fence. We're going to offer you a little bit of all of that, but we're going to guarantee the certainty and predictability that you will never run out of money. You'll have maximum cash flow and spend the least amount of money in Uncle Sam's pocket, and 300 million Americans you've never met before. Folks, we're here to help you. That's what we love.
300 million Americans. This guy, I'll tell you. Bob, one of the things that I love about what we do is the ability to provide service, right? And you are a better man than me. I will talk about our competition at some points, because to me, some of the competition in this area isn't even at our level ever. With the service that they provide compared to the service that our families are receiving right now. And that's the number one thing that our families and the families that we represent would say, is that the service is incredible. And the day that we stop being able to provide that service, God help us, because that is what makes all the difference. And service is about knowing your families, knowing your goals. We could talk about all these tools and these wonderful products and tools and everything till the cows come home. We could spend probably an hour doing that. But the reality is, if you're listening to this, you have to be able to help yourself as well. And helping yourself is knowing what you want to accomplish, having a distinguished set of goals. Distinctive. You know exactly what you're trying to do. You know why the money needs to last. You know what you want the money to do for you. Those are things that no amount of talking can ever do, other than you figuring that out on your own, which is very, very important. So, by the way, if you've listened, you've enjoyed, most of you already know this, go to taxfreefortmyers.com. You actually have the ability to check out all the latest podcasts. The book is on there as well. You have to spell the whole thing out, taxfreefortmyers.com, all spelled out. My mentor, Bob, here, now that we've reconnected now over the past couple of years, he's got his website that you can go to. And if you want to talk to him and pick his brain a little bit, that's what he's here for. It's Bob, B-O-B, Grace, G-R-A-C-E, Esquire, ESQ.com. So BobGraceESQ.com. And he's going to have a lot of wonderful information on that site as well for you to look at. You can also contact him. What's the email, Bob? What's the best email to get to you at?
It's reg@gracetax.com.
reg@gracetax.com. Reach out, talk to him. If you want to call in and talk to us, and we can get you to him as well. Any questions that you have for Bob, we'll try and address over the next couple of weeks. We didn't have a lot of time this week for your questions. I apologize for that, but hopefully you got a few key pieces of wisdom from today's podcast that you can take out of it. And I'm hoping, beyond hope, that I can get Bob back in the office with me for these podcasts once in a while, because I really miss having him here. So,
Adam, it was great to be here. And I want to tell all the listeners that you learned how to service people from your relationship with me. Thank you very much. And you continue to do that. And that's what's so important. You've got to take care of people, return phone calls, worry first about your clients, not yourself, and you'll always be a winner.
That's right. I appreciate it. So until we talk to you again, we wish you all the best, and we're going to sign off. Peace out, everybody.
Investment advisory services are offered through Evolution Wealth Management Incorporated, an investment advisor registered with the state of Florida. Registration does not imply any level of skill or training. Evolution Wealth Management's unique CRD number is 307644. You can obtain a copy of Evolution Wealth Management's firm brochure, Form ADV Part 2A, free of charge by visiting advisorinfo.sec.gov. Evolution Wealth Management offers investment advisory services only, where it is appropriately registered or exempt from registration, and only after clients have entered into an investment advisory agreement confirming the terms of engagement and have been provided a copy of the firm's ADV Part 2A. Insurance services are provided by Evolution Retirement Services. Any guarantees mentioned are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company and may be subject to restrictions, limitations, or early withdrawal fees, which vary by the issuer. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. You should consider the charges, risks, expense, and investment objectives carefully before entering a contract. This material has been prepared for informational purposes only and should not be construed as a solicitation to affect or attempt to affect either transactions in securities or the rendering of personalized investment advice. This material is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax, legal, accounting, or other financial advice. Evolution Wealth Management and Evolution Retirement Services do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own tax, legal, and accounting advisors before engaging in any transaction. Evolution Wealth Management and Evolution Retirement Services are affiliated entities.